Welcome back, everyone. And first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to the fabulous speakers and panelists that joined this event. There was inspiration in everything that was shared with us today. And Ducks Disrupt teams, this is your big moment. But before launching into your final pitches, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our stellar lineup of judges. And to Andrew's point earlier, to be mindful of our time, I also tried my best to distill down the incredibly impressive bios of our 4 judges, but I didn't exactly take it down to the studs because I want the audience to see the gravitas of the judges here today. First off, we have Sherry Dunn. Sherry is the CEO and principal of ITBOM Consulting. She is an attorney and a former news anchor with executive level nonprofit experience. She has represented victims of domestic violence as an attorney, lobbied the federal government, and run a national foundation with a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Dunn's career has included legal and legal-related work, including training and providing program services for a national membership organization made up of attorneys. She then funded that system, providing more than $5 million in grants and overseeing program evaluations for organizations that provide legal services. So welcome, Sherry. Next up, we have Jordan Pape. Jordan is the CEO of the Pape Group and is the 4th generation Pape to lead the organization. Jordan manages a diverse portfolio of capital equipment dealership brands with coverage from Mexico to Alaska. Active in business and community affairs, Pape serves as a director for 1H2, formed to produce and distribute hydrogen as a clean fuel source. Pape also serves as an executive director for Oregon Business Council, a director for Oregon Business and Industry, and he sits on Governor Brown's Sustainable Healthcare Cost Growth Target. Welcome, Jordan. Next up is Rick Richard, who is a serial entrepreneur and is the founder and CEO of Staff Up App, a white label mobile app company that provides staffing and recruiting firms with their own branded iPhone and Android apps that modernize the entire candidate experience. He is also the founder of Groove Development, a mobile app development company. Welcome, Rick. And finally, we have Linda Weston. Linda brings over 30 years of senior leadership in tourism, professional sports, and the entrepreneurial world. Linda currently runs Raporto, a strategic consultancy that advises CEOs and executive directors looking to scale and grow with efficiency. And for 17 years, Linda served as president and executive director of the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network. And during her 17 years of leadership, OEN served more than 55,000 participants in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Linda also serves as an instructor for the Oregon Executive MBA, where she provides capstone guidance for our second-year MBA students. Thank you, Linda, and to all our judges for joining us here today. And now, Andrew, I'm handing it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rachel. And I want to reiterate both our thanks and appreciation for these tremendous judges and also our excitement. This is really what it's all about, is coming together and hearing what I want to note in a very, very short period of time each of these teams has assembled. Our logistics here are fairly straightforward. Each team will have 7 uninterrupted minutes to present. At the end of that time, we then have 8 minutes per team for Q&A with our judges. And then we have a 5-minute break in between each team that's intended to allow the judges a little bit of time to jot their final comments and also to allow that next team to get set up and ready to go. After all of our presentations, we will then shift into a couple different breakout rooms. There will be a room where I and the judges will go in order to deliberate and to discuss our impressions of each team. And also we'll have a room, 2 rooms actually, where each team will get to debrief with members of our Oregon Executive MBA team, a mini interview, if you will, on their experiences and their own reflections. We'll then come back together at the end of that for the big moment you're waiting for, the announcement of the winners of the 2021 Ducks Disrupt event, as well as some next steps, which will be guided by Paul Allen. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn things over to our first team presenting, and that is Changefinder. Changefinder, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I'm just going to queue up the screen now. If you live in a poor neighborhood like I do, you're more likely to die from COVID. I'm a board member of the Whitaker Community Council. one of over 170 nonprofits currently funded by the Oregon Health Authority to fight COVID in our most vulnerable neighborhoods around the state. Since July of last year, we've created this best-in-class public health campaign featuring our community's most vulnerable members and elevating their voices so that they can share with each other how to prevent COVID. But that was only the beginning. Last week, our nonprofit hosted a Johnson & Johnson vaccine clinic, the largest in Southern Oregon, in partnership with Walgreens, vaccinating hundreds. Right now, for nonprofits like ours, days of work can mean the difference between life and death. And when lives are on the line, we don't have an hour to waste. Unfortunately, that's exactly what we do every time we apply for grant funding. Corporate and private foundations all ask different questions. They require documentation like letters of support, audited financials, and budgets in different formats. This takes nonprofits days to do, if we choose to do it at all, stealing valuable time away from our efforts to fight the spread of COVID and get people vaccinated. But it's not just a problem for nonprofits. Foundation funders struggle with the same issues from the other side. They spend weeks reviewing applications, unable to get money in the hands of organizations making a difference. And those organizations that are doing work are often so focused on it that they don't even apply. And when they do, applications are often incomplete. But the real problem isn't grant applications. It's that there isn't a universal platform connecting foundations, nonprofits, and individual donors. Because of this, nonprofits lose productivity, miss submittal deadlines, and lose out on opportunities to bring in individual donors or volunteers. Meanwhile, foundations who fund nonprofits are at a deficit too, losing productivity reviewing incomplete grants, using old grant submission systems, and often can't reach the organizations in desperate need who are doing the best work. And individual donors are caught in the middle. They can't find worthy nonprofits easily. And when they find nonprofits they like, it's hard to validate their ratings against any benchmarks. And if they wanted to donate their time, there isn't a simple way to volunteer. Nonprofits don't just need more funding. We need a platform to connect with funders so we reduce the time we spend writing grants, improve foundation connections to at-risk communities, and provide individuals with the easiest way of donating their time and money. To effectively solve COVID, we need a Patreon for nonprofits. We need an app allowing funders, doers, and donors to work on the most pressing COVID challenges together. That app is ChangeFinder. ChangeFinder isn't just the universal platform connecting foundations, nonprofits, and donors. ChangeFinder saves nonprofits and foundations money. ChangeFinder virtually eliminates the time nonprofits spend on grant submissions through a single application that is formatted automatically and then submitted to nonprofits, from nonprofits to foundations on the platform, resulting in an average annual cost saving of $1,600. ChangeFinder also cuts down on the time foundations spend processing grant applications through providing completed, data-rich applications from relevant nonprofits that they are trying to serve, saving them an average of $4,000 every year. Our market is the entire nonprofit and foundation ecosystem in the United States, but we are taking it on one state at a time, starting in Oregon. For year one, we're looking to capture 10% of the total market of active nonprofits and foundations in Oregon. While we're capturing Washington in year two, we will continue to expand in Oregon. And in year three, we take on our biggest challenge yet, California, before going national in year four. With a market as large as ours, the growth rate is only limited by our available resources. In year one, we are launching the platform free of charge to Oregon nonprofits and foundations. As we expand to Washington in year two and begin to build capacity for individual donors, Oregon and nonprofits and foundations will pay a subscription, while Washington nonprofits receive the first year free. A percentage of individual donations through ChangeFinder will be captured as revenue. In year three, we will expand to California and begin to include pay-per-click advertising. When we go national in year four, we will do so with 4 unique revenue streams. Our proprietary technology solutions act as the engine that drives our business model forward. Our IP comes from machine learning and AI powered by the cloud to do high-impact data science, telling nonprofits which grant opportunities they should apply for, foundations which nonprofits they should fund, advertisers what audiences they can target while giving them trend analysis so they can design the most relevant content, and individuals which organizations they should give to. In year one, we will leverage existing sales channels to rapidly iterate the platform, expanding our functionality and customer base simultaneously. Through our nonprofit, state, and foundation networks, we're ready to launch. Our financial projections reflect our growth strategy with no revenue in year one, but with significant revenue in year two from our foundation and nonprofit customers. While operational expenses continue to rise as we penetrate new markets and expand our customer base in year 3 and 4, we will reach our break-even point in year 4 solely from nonprofit and foundation revenue streams. We didn't include revenue from individual donors and advertisers because we wanted to tell you today that our core customer base of our business is so strong, we could be profitable by serving them alone. And because we are working with a multi-sided business model, by supporting foundations to adopt the platform, we will drive nonprofit subscriptions by making the platform attractive and easy to use for foundations and the communities they serve on day 1. We crush the competition by offering a unique set of solutions that isn't available anywhere else in the current marketplace. We are more data rich than the best funding connector platform Patreon, and better at connecting nonprofits to funding than the best data platform GuideStar. And by providing features currently non-existent in the marketplace, like universal grant applications and a nonprofit volunteer labor marketplace, we have a unique set of competitive advantages. But our greatest asset isn't our technology, but the team designing, testing, and delivering it. We know the problems facing our customers because we ourselves are our customers. We are individual donors, nonprofit board members, and grantors with deep subject matter expertise and the credentials to match. Our team can deliver on the promise of ChangeFinder, but only with your help. Today, we are asking for $460,000 in startup capital so that we can bring on 170 plus nonprofits onto the ChangeFinder platform tomorrow. Through ChangeFinder and with your support, we can bring donors, foundations, and the nonprofits they serve to solve COVID's most pressing challenges together. ChangeFinder. Be the change you wish to see in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, a round of applause. Zoom is so odd in this way, but I do hope you appreciate the applause coming to you from all corners of Oregon. Let me turn to our judges now. Questions for this team?
Sure, I'll dive in first. Ian, great energy that you brought to that presentation. Thank you so much. There's a lot online going on right now with Facebook and Twitter about how to control content as you have idea exchange going back and forth. Parler on the one side, Facebook and Twitter on the other. How do you control that in your environment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jordan. Thanks so much for asking that. I think what we're working to do is cultivate a community of content creators and really empower our advertisers who are on the platform, who are just as impact motivated as us, to make sure that they know the best trends so that they can design content that really resonates with our community. Our community are going to be people, I know the Pape family has a foundation itself, people who are committed to community change and change across the United States. So we want to be able to foster a real set of conversations with all of our folks in the ecosystem so that when advertisers are brought on to create content, that it's content that really resonates with the community and that's in alignment with our own values.
Thank you.
I would like to ask how you deal with the differing requirements of each foundation or funder. In my experience, every foundation has different things that they would like to see in a grant application. And in fact, even in this day and age, some of them require everything by hard copy versus online. So what have you developed to deal with those differing requirements?
Might I have one on this one? Okay, so one of the core things is that there are a few things that every single foundation is going to want. Your paperwork, your filing, some basic financial information. But then in addition to that, there are kind of a pool of things of interest to each foundation. And while individual foundations may have different questions or things that they need to know within that pool, the general pool is largely going to be the same. And so by providing nonprofits with the ability to fill out and then update their answers to kind of the broad range of questions, then the foundations can then select which questions they want, and nonprofits will already have those answers prepped and ready.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Sherry. I give my little yellow hand down. My question is, are you all familiar with the concepts of trust-based philanthropy, which I believe is the Whitaker and several other foundations have been really trying to get foundations to focus on. And this concept stresses streamlined applications, interactions. I mean, an alliance with a group like that to launch this type of platform might be very productive because they're already working to get foundations and philanthropy in general to streamline how they interact with nonprofits.
Sherry, thanks so much for bringing that up. And I just wanted to commend Carson for jumping in. I think that's one of the greatest strengths of our team is that we all know, even when Zoom hiccups happen, that we can all step in together. And Sherry, the Whitaker Community Council, the nonprofit where I lead my COVID work, we're actually enjoying the benefits of trust-based philanthropy from Oregon Health Authority. So we have our embedded network of 170 plus nonprofits that I myself am a part of that really engaged in CARES Act funding, and they took the trust-based philanthropic approach. So they knew implicitly from nonprofit organizations and the experiences that they had that we couldn't put a lot of boundaries on these dollars because the work was so urgent. And really, too, that same model and thesis is what informs our work. We know that a lot of foundations are really focused on impact, but they are spending so much of their time on their core business, which is making sure that they do their own due diligence. So really for us, it's kind of accelerating the pace of change by looking at what works, what we're hearing from all of our customer sets, whether it's nonprofit organizations and foundations, in order to accelerate that pace of change.
Rick, do you have any
Yeah, so I had a quick question about your pay-per-click model. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I had a little trouble there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't quite clear on, if you could just elaborate a little more on your pay-per-click. Is that system already built? Is that what you're planning to build with your 460K you want to raise, or what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so I can answer the question around what we plan to do with the money right now, and then I'll pass it on to Yi and to Carson to answer some of the more technical questions around pay-per-click advertising. But initially, we're focusing on our customer base of the interactions between nonprofits and foundations. As I said during our financial slide too, we're really concentrated on understanding and delivering the highest amount of value proposition to those two customers, because through them alone, we can be profitable and reach our break-even point by year 4. But we know that pay-per-click advertising, while we're not going to be using our initial $460,000 investment that we're asking today to build out that capacity, we know that we want to have a host of data-rich interactions from our customers, whether they be individual donors, nonprofit organizations, or the foundations that serve them, so that when we give these data to advertisers, that they are able to design the best content. And so with that, I'll pass it on to Carson and Yi if y'all have any additions. And in true Zoom format, so y'all don't talk over each other, please do Rochambeau to see which of you goes first.
I'll go first. That's an easy win. If you look at the core business model here, we are having a multi-sided business model, which means that we bring the nonprofits and the foundation together. And in a similar fashion, the pay-per-view, pay-per-click is also related to this model. It's basically measuring the information together with a target audience. So that's where we think that even though that it is a side business in the very beginning, but our platform is very extendable to extend the match from the nonprofit to foundation to the advertisement to both nonprofit and also the foundation.
Okay, thank you.
A question about privacy and client data. You know, even in the most streamlined application, you're going to have information, and many nonprofits deal with very sensitive information. What is your plan for privacy?
Yeah, so I'll talk from my own personal experience, Sherry. Thanks so much for bringing it up. And then I'd pass it on to Carson or to Yi to talk about some of the ways that we're building in security into the platform to protect data. I know as someone who, gives out our EIN, our employer identification number, to the state and to other foundations, that it's critically important to me that my privacy be respected. But also we work with a lot of vulnerable populations too. And so making sure that we're compliant with any data requirements such as HIPAA, or if we work on education initiatives, FERPA too, is really front and center of my value system and how I want to be able to empower nonprofits to do their work. We would never do it at the expense of data privacy, particularly for communities that we know that we want to work with who are in some of the most vulnerable parts of our state and our country. So with that, I'll pass it on to Yi or to Carson to talk about some of the data privacy feature sets that are baked into the technology platforms that we use.
Yeah, so, our kind of exactly what Ian said, we have to be able to pass things securely. That's just going to be part of building the platform. In terms of what we provide to advertisers, we're going to follow kind of the European data privacy model. So it's going to be a lot of opt-in. It's going to be a lot of, if we're giving data to other people, then the nonprofits will in some way be incentivized for that. And we're going to make sure that everybody's getting what they need.
Any other questions from the judges?
I would like to know how the investors that are that you've targeted, the 460,000, how do they get a return on that investment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Linda. And fundamentally, we are about creating systems change and empowering nonprofits. But the best way that we can do that is by being profitable. We know that our success is the success of our customers. And we really feel, like I said during the presentation, that the sky's the limit. If we can resource ourselves adequately, that initial $460,000 investment is just the bare bones to hire on 2 staff to build our sales pipeline. Like I said, because I sit on the steering committee of the state's health improvement plan because of my nonprofit work, we're deeply networked in with our nonprofit and foundation customers. But to your point, how do investors get the return back? They get the return back by us doing a really good job of serving our customers. And we intend to capture 10% of the Oregon market in year 1, but with additional resources, we know that we can be able to capture more of that market in Oregon and more of that market in Washington and Oregon when we expand year 2 and beyond.
So
And
are you talking then a typical angel investor? Because if that's the case, they want a return on the investment. They would expect some kind of liquidity event or something like that. So I'm a little confused as to whether or not that's the kind of investment you're talking about, or you're talking about an investment who wants you to help change the system.
Right. So for the specific agreement, I'll pass it on to Yi. We do want to work with investors who have the same value system as us, but we certainly want to be able to have an agreement that results in a return on investment for our investors.
Okay,
so I'll pass that on to Yi.
Thanks.
Yeah, Linda, primarily we are looking for angel investors, and we have built up this business model, so you can see it's very scalable. So the $460,000 is really for upfront investment. If you look at the multi-year chart, the business model can scale very well with the large volume that is coming up in year 2, 3, and 4. That's where we are making money. And so the return of the investment is very clear that in year 3, we're going to break even. And then in year 4, we are making money in a pretty tremendous fashion.
And from the equity perspective, we see kind of 3 primary routes. So one, we have, the investors get equity, we become very successful. The founders will have equity dividend payouts. On the other hand, we could we could foresee ourselves getting acquired by a larger company somewhere down the road. We'd have to make sure that the value system is aligned. So that would be another exit event. Then obviously in the event of an IPO, everybody makes money too.
Thank you, guys. And just in general, great job on the presentation.
Thanks, Linda. And I wanted to take this time to just say thank you so much to the judges, to Andrew and the rest of the team at U of O, and the whole team here at Changefinder. It's been, a real privilege and pleasure to engage.
So I just have one quick question. So this will be year 1 when you get your funding, right? Is there any traction so far?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that question, Rick. And I would just say that, my background, I work in higher education right now. My background is in public policy and politics in municipal government. And I can say that there is traction. We're again, go back to this network of 170 nonprofits in the state of Oregon who've already received CARES Act funding, and we're likely to receive additional stimulus funds through this latest bill. And the state governments, local governments, county governments all see the value in working with nonprofits, not just during COVID. The recovery from COVID is going to take years as well, but we have some really pressing, wicked challenges ahead of us. And so the traction that we've received in year one is by being a part of this network and having a seat at the table. These are leverages that I have, connections that I have, so we can accelerate quickly so that we can get data onto the platform as we're building it, iterating as we're building it, additional feature sets, and creating more value proposition for our customers.
And also critically, we can sign people up for the platform before it's finished being built, because we're going to be figuring out what information do we want. Our sales team will be working as the platform is being built. So we'll be able to pick up traction very, very quickly and very quickly see that, okay, people actually want this.
All right, thank you. With that, we need to move on. There's again the theme of the day: never enough time. But a huge round of applause. Thank you for a great presentation, and thank you for going first. That's never an easy slot. I'm excited now to move on to our second presentation of the day. This is SmartDoc. Mitch and Lindsay, I believe you are taking the way, and it's all yours.
We'll go ahead and get started here then. Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon. I'm Mitch Pater. I'm the CEO of SmartDoc, and I'm also a general dentist. A few years ago, I completed my 4-hour lecture that I have to take every 2 years for my license in the medical emergencies in the dental office. And at the end of that, I thought, what did I just learn here? What am I supposed to do with this information? Basically, I just checked a box so I could get my license. But a couple months later at lunch one day, one of my older employees actually had a medical emergency in the office. My mind went completely blank. So I yelled at my staff and said, you go call 911 and you go get the emergency kit and get the AED. And she looked at me and said, what is that? I thought, oh no. And that's what inspired me to create SmartDoc. Then I thought, what if I had something to guide me through an emergency? Help me train my team. What would that look like? What happens the next time someone in my office has a medical emergency? What if I have one? And will my staff really know what to do? This problem is only going to get worse here. John Holt talked about the silver tsunami. If you look at this graphic here, it clearly shows Americans are living longer, and much of this is due to advanced medicine. And if COVID has taught us anything, age is now considered an underlying condition, and really just how fragile we are. This means that dentists are seeing more older patients with compromised medical histories. And because of this, there's an increased likelihood of experiencing medical emergency in the office. And patients aren't always honest about their medical history either. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know about our patients. And research has revealed that after 5 years in practice, every dentist has experienced at least one medical emergency in their office. And 90% of those dentists actually don't feel prepared for these emergencies. That's 66,000 dentists nationwide. The solution to this problem is SmartDoc, which stands for Simulated Medical Aid Response Training Dental Office Companion. I'm going to hand this over now to Lindsay Herzog. She's COO and also the co-founder of SmartDoc. She could talk about the product in a little more detail. Lindsay?
Thanks, Mitch. My name's Lindsay Herzog, and I've spent most of my career commercializing products. So getting products into customer hands and making sure they're happy. I joined SmartDoc because I think Mitch has identified a real gap in the market and come up with an idea to address it that has a ton of potential. SmartDoc is a next generation medical emergency training software platform. It teaches a dental office staff what to do in an emergency, but unlike alternatives, SmartDoc also helps them practice in real time with real-time medical emergency scenarios with all the team members. It provides in-office comprehensive training in a cloud-based format that can be accessed on any smartphone or PC. So let's look at the UI and see what using SmartDoc is like. A training session typically begins with an informative video and recommended steps to recognize and manage a particular emergency, followed by a review of how to use the office's emergency kit. Then comes the emergency scenario, such as cardiac arrest, through a real-time choose-your-own-adventure type consequence type simulation. And finally, a quiz and team debrief. With regular practice, a SmartDoc trained team will respond calmly and efficiently during an actual emergency. Everyone on the team has an assignment and knows what needs to be done, whether that's calling 911, directing responders, getting the medical kit, or taking the patient's pulse. It should be noted that SmartDoc is not used to diagnose an actual emergency, but teaches signs and symptoms that are typical for a particular emergency for training purposes only. So in addition to providing the skills and confidence to save lives, SmartDoc fulfills licensure requirements for dentists and hygienists, such as continuing education through accreditation by the American Dental Association and the Academy of General Dentistry. Our business model is to sell annual subscriptions for $7.99, generating recurring revenue. This is a completely different model than the traditional trainings, which are only once a year. SmartDoc is available 24/7, on demand, and on any device. As a SaaS offering, by year 2, we're projecting a gross margin of 85%. Let's look at the competitive landscape through the measures of value and cost. If we look at the 2 primary competitors, in the lower left-hand quadrant, we have the 4-hour lecture-based training course that Mitch mentioned. It's purely informational and doesn't apply content or involve team practice. It can be attended off-site in a lecture setting or through an online video with a short test afterwards. Think of a recording of a crusty old guy droning on in front of a slide deck. Not engaging at all, right? It's no wonder Mitch and his staff didn't feel prepared after this type of training. Now let's look at the other primary option in the upper right quadrant. Taking the entire staff to a training center is high value, but really expensive and doesn't support ongoing training process. And now with COVID, having in-person training is a lot more challenging. So there's even more of a need for effective virtual training. SmartDoc delivers high-value training content that's just slightly higher in price than the lecture-based training. It's sustainable and team-based. So how are we going to inform dentists that this new convenient option exists? On social media, such as Instagram and Facebook, in dental blog sites, and we'll also use SEO and Google Ads. And the banner on the right here is an example of how we intend to advertise once dental conventions return. 2 years ago, 230,000 dental professionals attended the ADA convention in San Francisco. So that's a lot of our target market in one place. A couple of key assumptions we have are that distance learning will continue once COVID subsides, and our training content will be compatible with a white box digital training platform, which would help keep our costs down. Mitch and my vision is to help dental professionals save their patients' lives, and some of our next steps to accomplish this are to complete usability testing and seek funding from an angel investor. Initially, we'll minimize risk by concentrating on the dental industry, then we'll move to other medical markets such as optometry and dermatology. What's most exciting to me about SmartDoc is that it makes saving lives actionable and attainable. The reality is, a lot of dentists out there aren't prepared for an emergency. Like Mitch, this is really through no fault of their own. The current training is just outdated and largely ineffective. But nobody wants to go to a dentist who's not prepared for an emergency. Mitch and I are equipped to make SmartDoc certification an industry standard so that dentists feel confident and patients feel safe. Thank you, and we welcome any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, SmartDoc. I see lots of applause in the pictures, even if we don't hear them. Judges, who would like to kick off our questions?
I'll start real quick. So the training in your top right-hand quadrant, you said, there's value in in-person training. So, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's a good point. So what does the app or your system do in terms of that type of same feedback that a person would receive from in training versus using the app or your system?
This training is hands-on, where the training that we get typically is not a hands-on. It teaches everybody the roles and responsibilities. Is that what you're asking there?
I guess that's part of it. So in-person training, you can ask a question if you don't understand something. You can go a little deeper. There's all sorts of benefits of being in person. So I was just wondering what your benefits were, or how you tried to match that in your app.
Well, there would definitely be, a way for feedback in there, but it's mostly, the information and with quizzes and kind of a basic feedback that way.
I think also, to add to what Mitch said, dentists go and hygienists go and get this information, and then it's their responsibility to apply it and practice, but they really don't have any assistance in doing that. And practicing in your own office, simulating a scenario is critical. So SmartDoc, everyone has it in their own hand. It walks them through a scenario, and so they get that practice and that repetition, and they get it for all different types, because we see this being used, monthly, so that you get that repetition.
Okay. And then you mentioned your subscription pricing. Did I hear $7.99? Is that what you said?
Yes, $799 a year.
So that would be for one office, unlimited people, or is that, do you have a certain breakdown for type of?
It'd be certain, it'd be for the entire office, for all those licensed in that office, dentists and hygiene as well. So if there's multiple dentists, multiple hygienists, they would all benefit from that as well, instead of having to take, all go and pay for the course, the lecture course individually.
Okay. And I guess my last question, I don't want to hog all the questions. That's one more. So during the training, a few years ago, I remember going to the airport, and first time I noticed the CPR machines, right? Actually using it right there, getting hands on there. So in your app, for certain type of training, is there step-by-step, or is it more instructional? Here's the data, or is it walking a person through actual scenarios where they can practice and know the response from?
There's a little bit of both in there. It would be, there would be step-by-step, how do you use it? And then with that little quiz afterwards, everybody would go and basically practice these steps. And each medical emergency would have a scenario where the team would get together and begin training through the scenario itself.
Now, I'll jump in real quick. So I love the targeted focus. Start with a group that you know well and expand from there. I would say that, in the heavy equipment industry, we would very much benefit from having an app like that with our safety committees. So there's a huge market out there, I imagine, for what you're doing. My question is, how much is the content going to cost, and who would you go to that would be the certified provider of the actual content?
Yeah, great question. We sort of have two options with this. There is one person named Stanley Malabed, who he's sort of the go-to for this content. All of the lectures and the in-person trainings, they use that content. So since there's no interactive digital training right now, we intend to approach them and get pricing and see if there's a possibility for an exclusive contract with them. If not, then the content is out there. And so the alternative would be spending more on content developers to collate this information and assemble it in our own way. Does that answer your question?
It does. And then just as a follow-on, and maybe I missed it as you guys were going through, I didn't know how much you were asking for, and would it make sense to just approach Stanley's group as an investment into your entity, or do you need outside investors?
We hadn't thought of approaching Stanley's group. I think that is a really valid point. Our initial ask is 1 million. So that we were thinking that from angel investors. But yeah, it's a great alternative that I think we should consider.
Thank you.
I had a question about your focus, although something's weird going on with my Zoom, so I apologize. It's jumping all over the screen. I don't know what's happening, but I had a question about your focus on older populations. Is that the hook, or there have been incidents in dental offices with children, younger children in particular, around the use of anesthetics and people not being prepared properly to do CPR. It's actually a bit of a problem. So is it for everyone, or is it the older age just the hook? I'm just confused.
It's for everyone, and for every dental office. We just kind of looked at the general dentistry as probably the most undertrained aspect, undertrained dentists there in medical emergencies. But pediatric dentists, that is definitely, it is a big problem, and there's a lot of sedation going on. But a lot of the sedation also now happens in hospitals and ORs as well. So the dental office is probably the most concerning when we're doing IV sedation and other, oral sedations as well.
The focus on the elder population is because that's the largest contributor to medical emergencies. And that population is changing the most, right? As we've heard several times today, the silver tsunami. So I guess the need is increasing because of the older population, and then also because of COVID, with more, potential after effects from that disease.
Great job on the presentation, guys. This is very intriguing, and I have to say that it makes me think twice about going to the dentist and what I hope they're prepared for. It's already been asked about the amount of investment you're looking for and that kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking of as the exit strategy.
So we would definitely like to sell. We're thinking 10 years. So initially we'll focus on the dental market, and then in a couple of years, hopefully expand to optometry, dermatology, the other markets, like we said. And then, ultimately we would like to sell. We are thinking 112 million is our goal. We're still early in the phase, so that could change, but that's our goal at this point.
Thank you.
Other questions from the judges?
One last question. You mentioned raising $1 million. Where's that actually being targeted?
You mean where in the company will that go?
Where are you spending the $1 million? How is that?
Content development. So there's going to be some legal concerns as well, but content development and the training itself, the training platform.
Yeah, we'll try to get a white box training platform to put the content on, so that should keep costs down. Outsource some marketing, also, some expertise in finance, and also in someone with a background in digital training.
Excellent. I'm going to let the judges.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes,
Andrew?
of course.
I'm just curious as to whether or not you are familiar with a company called Open Sesame that does online training for companies.
We've looked at several training platforms, but no, not that one.
Open Sesame is based here in Portland, and it might be worth exploring whether there is some kind of a strategic partnership you would be able to develop with them.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not heard of them either.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to let the judges tally their scores, then take any final notes, and I'm going to use the the moderator's prerogative just to ask a question of curiosity of my own. What's your biggest worry about this idea, Mitch and Lindsay? What keeps you up at night?
Say it again, Andrew. I'm sorry.
I'm curious what your biggest worry is. You know more about this idea than any of us. What's keeping you up at night as you ponder this?
As far as the actual business model, or
right, well, I'm thinking here in terms of risks. Is it whether you can actually build this, whether you can attract customers, whether some competitor might swoop in and steal it?
I think dentists are a tough nut to crack. Trying to get them to buy into anything they're cagey characters, really, and they really work on word of mouth. That's where I get most of my stuff. It's from other colleagues. Hey, you should check this out. A lot of us don't like to dive in. There are some who got to be the first on the block for everything.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a response only you can give, Mitch, as a dentist. So.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's always the thing. And trying to get a hold of dentists is hard.
Excellent. All right. Thank you again to Team Smart Doc. Another round of applause. Wonderful job. And let's move on. We are keeping right on time. Look at that. 12:30, and we are to virtual sales platform. Take it away, team.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cooper Fair, and along with my team of KJ Russo and James Myron, we are happy to present to you the virtual sales platform. So this initiative came from my personal experience where I am currently in the sports industry. I'm a ticket sales rep overseeing the suites for an NBA team, the Orlando Magic, former University of Oregon alumni undergrad class of 2012. So with the issues that we're facing nowadays is our positions were very much hands-on, in person, taking to lunch, meeting clients at their offices, or down at the games in the arenas. As we all know, with the pandemic, a lot of that has changed. Through our research, we have found that this is not only a problem in our industry, but also it revolves around many other organizations in verticals who were the same way, where it was a lot of face-to-face interactions, setting the appointments and being engaging with your clients. And a lot of that came with the sales training that a lot of those reps received was how to get in front of people. Now that our industries have been turned upside down on their head, everyone's been forced to do the Zoom or any virtual meeting. So a couple of things that we have found from some of the data points is that these meetings, nobody's doing their research prior to the call. They don't know the right questions to ask the upcoming prospects that they're dealing with. And some of our direct consumers are wishing that the conversations would be a little more efficient and effective. And the big industry that we are targeting is sales training, where Harvard Business Review has shown us that it's a $70 billion industry in America. Based on the type of reactions we have found, that there definitely is a there to be more efficient in our question asking. Thus, what does work in a virtual sales call? And knowing that it's not just in the industry that I live in, that this can expand amongst many others. So with only 20% of what's being taught is being retained, the things that do work is multiple practice, and repetition of relevant materials and stories that help you relate to the products that you are trying to pitch. Of course, having an organization and a flow at your fingertips will help that process in a virtual world. And the number one thing is being prepared before you engage. What we love about this quote that we found through one of our LinkedIn message boards is doing your research so what you say has to resonate, is relevant, valuable, timely, and worthwhile. And unfortunately, a lot of sales reps do not communicate that when it comes to a virtual call. Thus, the virtual sales platform is born. My idea involves mostly the pre-meeting prep work when you're getting ready to host a virtual meeting in terms of a software product that will act as an attachment or an extension to the virtual Zoom or Teams or whatever virtual platform you're using. The solution is in preparing the correct question asking platform, which will be a game plan, a flow, and a process to your upcoming meeting. In a perfect world, this is a learning game-like repetition. So this will bring the power of a controlled and detailed conversation back to the hands of a sales rep and allow them to take that control in running a virtual meeting efficiently and effectively. The power in virtual conversations lie in the question asking, which engages the customer to allow them to open up, and this platform will help communicate all of that. So step one will involve the pre-meeting sales work of identifying the industry you're talking to and that individual. Based on the information that you type in, it'll then auto-populate a bank of questions that is most commonly used and recommended to engage those types of clientele. The user, the rep, will then be able to select the list of questions that they think is going to be most relevant. Once you have that information organized in your set game plan, then that question list can then be reviewed with the sales manager, your sales leader, to better prepare you as you go into these meetings, and of course, make any adjustments as necessary. But at least then they know they're confident to stay on track with that pre-meeting review. And then of course, execute. And that is a version of what we envision of how the sales platform will look like in execution mode. And then as it loads as an extension, you will have all those list of questions in a concise, easy to follow format. Then the answers can be recorded either voice to text or typed out as the rep is talking. All answers post-meeting and the notes are right there, loaded up into CRM after allowing for any post-meeting review and coaching from the managers and their reps. And what I liked about what Mohan said a little bit earlier is how they used to have a post-meeting recap every single time. This could lead straight into that. An awesome quote we found from Kartik Mahola, the founder of Inspire One Technologies, is that an engaging loop between learning and gaming, for example, could ensure that sales reps pick up new skills habitually and in bite-sized manner, fueling high repetition rates. Through game-based assessments, a sales rep could easily and repeatedly attempt a given set of questions, thus making all of our reps experts. Our business model is going to be a software and development company where, of course, on the front end, it's going to take a number of the focus will be programmers and coders in the development stage. Thus, once developed, moving into our executive team. I myself, I do live in the sports sales industry world. A couple of my colleagues live in live entertainment as well, where we will first go to the industries that we know, talking to their head of sales. From there, their sales teams and managers will then incorporate it into their own sales organizations to use on their virtual calls. And thus, the revenue coming back will be in the form of a monthly subscription-based per user fee of $55. And then that money coming back in will be pumped into R&D to increase our programming as we expand. We are very well aware of the, I guess, crowded field of technology and sales. But what's kind of interesting in the realm that we're living in is there's two wide ends of the spectrums. From the very far reach, you might notice a couple of familiar names there with Salesforce, SalesLoft, all the way to the very traditional photo in the top right next to us is the pen and paper. With these two ends of the spectrum, they have their pros and cons. Pen and paper lacks the data. And then, of course, SalesLoft is a very expensive tool. Our opportunity is going to exist from the $70 billion that I mentioned earlier, but then focus on the live entertainment and sports industry that we know, $14.5 million, which is what is spent on sales training and sales training. And then specifically, we'll start out with the MBA. Our go-to-market strategy is going to be the year 0 in the first 8 months, offering a free edition for reps to use through social media, marketing, and advertising. And then as we go to market through the MBA, and then growing into other sports leagues and then live entertainment venues. Looking past year 5, we do plan to expand into corporate America. Through our financial statements, based on the collecting 60% of the teams that we're going after, we do plan to break even after year 1. Our team is going to consist of myself, KJ Russo, and James Myron. And then our executive board of advisors is going to be Jesse, Kevin, Andrea, and Mariah, who are all executive MBA graduates of University of Oregon in class of 2020. And then today we are asking for $300,000 in exchange for 10% equity to cover the cost of the first 8 months in terms of software and application development, marketing costs, and overhead. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cooper. Another round of applause. Terrific. Judges, who would like to kick us off?
I'll kick it off if no one's ready. So I'm a little confused, Cooper, to be honest with you. So it sounds like your system is essentially a gap selling system. Is that true? Where your sales reps, I believe your statistics, are not really ready for a presentation as they enter the meeting. I get that. But what's not clear to me is being prepared and then seeing what the customer wants. Is there's that gap in between? I'm not quite following how you help with that gap in between of what you prepare for and what the customer wants.
Thank you very much, Rick, and absolutely. So with our process, where we've seen the biggest gap, and I love how you phrase it that way, is in the execution of having a game plan going into those meetings. So for example, if you are planning to meet with a head of a construction company and your questions revolving around, whether it's introductory, what are they facing in the industry, how we can meet that gap in terms of where they are now, where they want to be in the future. A lot of that especially as from our industry, as the sales managers are not in the room or on the meetings, since everything is virtual. Also, a lot of the pre-meeting prep work isn't being done. The efficiency in the conversations is lackluster. And then, of course, the post-meeting recap and data collecting is almost non-existent. So I guess I'd say the gap from where we would be in terms of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the meetings. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I've got to think about it a little bit. I may try to ask a follow-up, but so far that helps.
Thank you very much.
I have a question about how is the information that where does that come from? I mean, are you tapping experts? Are you using machine learning? Like where are you getting this interactive information?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much for asking, Sherry. The initial intent would be from industry experts, from our knowledge, our expertise in the industries, as well as those that we work with. Of course, being in the early stages of this, as it grows and develops, we can always incorporate, AI and other, intelligent learning. With us, we figured that we could definitely start, since we're starting the sales process into the industries that we know well. We also know the clientele of those industries, and let's say that list of questions and that question bank would come from our familiarity of. I guess I could say past meetings and, most recommended questions. And I would say to grow from there as well as we expand, after years 5+.
So how much research did you do with salespeople about their frustrations and challenges in making those sales calls virtually? I'm a little surprised that the premise is that people making virtual sales calls wouldn't be prepared in advance, that they wouldn't have done their research, that they wouldn't have their list of questions already prepared. That seems odd to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much, Linda. To answer your question in terms of how much research, the research started once we got our team together. So it's been about 3 weeks. And then we were able to engage with, I want to say 12 to 15. We narrowed it into 3 different categories: current sales reps, current sales managers, and the end recipients of those meetings, where we absolutely do know that there is something there with the ineffectiveness, the unpreparedness, the trainings, the sales trainings that happened prior to COVID are just not being repeated in the field. And yes, trust me, I'm right there with you that I would have the same expectation that people would be more prepared into the meetings, but for whatever reason, that bridge is not being connected.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
A quick follow-up question based on what Linda was saying. So that's a good point, that you'd be surprised if a salesperson weren't prepared for a meeting. And so goes back to my original question. It seems like if a salesperson is selling what they already have, then they're not going to be prepared for what the client really wants. And that's where my question comes from you is, does your system help you sell what you have, or is it to help you bring out what the client really needs?
Second part of what you mentioned, what the client really needs, which in my experience, or where it holds dearest to me is going to be in the question asking skills of that rep. So a big problem that we do find is that reps will get on these meetings and go immediately into product dumping. And then you basically become, just the website learning for that individual. And the success rates when you go immediately to that step are just, you get diminished as the conversation goes along. So to the later part of your question, Rick, was helping unveil what the client needs through the proper question asking. And hopefully by the end of that conversation, you could realize if there's a good fit or not. Okay.
So then does your system have, tracking of the sale, right? So initially you do your discovery like you're describing, right? I find that that generally wouldn't be done in one sales call, right? You probably have to assume multiple calls. So does the system also help, track where that is, and then, finally get you to what you ultimately want would be a close and solve the need?
Absolutely. Those are actually, those are things that we were thinking of in regards to building out this product in terms of timing and being more focused on what we were going to talk about. Yes, question flowing, if it's leading in the right direction, it can go to product pitching, it can go to recommendations, it can go to helping set up the follow-up meeting. There's a lot of avenues that this can go from that immediate stem. We just figured that pitch might take like an hour. So, but then of course, from the question asking and the gathering of data and information, and when it's loaded into CRM, the post-meeting follow-up, the creation of pitch decks. And what's interesting about what you mentioned, Rick, is there's, from the graph of competition that we showed, a lot of those industries are focused on the how to set a meeting and how to find the best prospect, and then the other ones are on the very end of how to have a very fancy pitch deck, and how to engage the clientele. Not many that we have found are focused on this exact efficient meeting standpoint of everything. So we hope that we found a little niche there.
So Cooper, this sounds a lot like marketing automation meets the front end of sales training to me. Two questions I've got for you. One is, tell me a little bit about how you got to $55 per month per user. And then the second part is, the danger of marketing automation, obviously, is that the information starts to feel canned on the reception side. How is your product going to stay unique so that the person receiving the other end of your pitch doesn't see it as another canned pitch?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordan. We came up, so to answer your first part of that question, we came up with the $55 per user subscription-based model based on our income statement, specifically in what year 0 was going to cost us, in terms of it'd be about $245,000 in year 0 that we were going to lose, and then our ask is around 1.25 times that to cover the losses of year 0 and give us a little bit of runway into year 2. So with that being the case, at $55 per prescription per user, and based on the amount of sales that we were expecting at a 60% success rate from our target audience, that gave us a net present value of about $3.1 million, and that was the most affordable per person rate that we could do to have that NPV based on the ask that we know we needed. What's interesting, or does that answer the question?
Yep, it answers how you got to 55, okay. And then the marketing automation piece, how do you keep it from being stale?
Yeah, absolutely. To even follow up on that, what was interesting is that same dollar amount is very similar to the type of competitors that you saw on that list. One that stuck out the most is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, charges about $60 per person, per user. So very similar lines. And then I apologize. I was thinking of my answer. What was the second part again?
How you keep the training content from not feeling stale, like marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And was that in more regards to if you were on the receiving end of me using the product, or is that in regards to keeping the sales reps engaged and still using it?
You can choose how you want to answer that one.
Okay, absolutely. Well, from a couple of standpoints, is from the initial onboarding process of it, we will get the sales reps more involved with this, because we understand that this is lacking from multiple different levels. So now that reps are kind of coming in there with a lack of knowledge and understanding of how to get this meeting efficient, this is going to give them the arsenal they need to feel confident that this tool and the pre-meeting prep work is going to help streamline a path to more success rates in these conversations, whether it's in regards to second meetings, quicker close rates, finding more potential candidates faster. And then from the other side of it, where yes, from our team, whether it's tracking the list of questions that are being used, the success rates of those, are certain questions being asked that don't get the response that was deemed. We can, from our end, keep up to date with the R&D, and this could very well turn into a single purchase subscription based on like inside sales reps and newer reps. And then as they kind of grow and evolve, maybe they take it onto their own path. We're also looking to grow that list of databases as we go into other industries.
Thank you.
Excellent. That brings us to our time. Thank you again, Cooper and the whole team. Another round of applause for all of you. Thank you so much. And this brings us to our halfway mark on these presentations. Lots of great ideas here. Maybe a quick stretch, flex those muscles. Excellent. Rachel, good demonstration there. And let's keep moving. So our next team up is Apply Anywhere.
All right, so I'd like to welcome you to our pitch for Apply Anywhere, an app for applications. So just to start off, we'll look at the problem. For applicants, the problem is obvious. When you're applying, it's just repeated manual filling of application forms, and it's the same information over and over again. You fill out the information on the job board. It kicks you over. You have to sign up at the ATS site. You have to fill in the information again. You get into the ATS site. You fill it again. Repeat it. It just beats you down over the course of time. So we want to alleviate that pain for applicants. So long story short, the hiring process is inefficient, time-consuming, and tedious. For employers, many of the problems employers have with these processes are dependent on who the employer is. And additionally, there's a lot of competition vying for employer attention right now. So the question becomes, how do we survive? Well, we do what Walmart did. We start small and we start quiet. So instead of starting out as Apply Anywhere, we start out as Agri-Apply. So our target market is low-skill workers and their employers in an industry that's largely ignored by the current hiring giants. You don't see agriculture jobs on Monster, Indeed, LinkedIn, or any of those. And there's a huge target market for this. In Washington and Oregon alone, there's over 70,000 farms. Between those, they employ over 300,000 employees. Including California and the Pacific region, that number goes up to almost 1 million, which is roughly a third of all the agricultural workers in the US. Of all the agricultural workers in the US, 19% identify as migratory, 81% are seasonal. Both of those statistics imply that those people are losing their jobs and having to find new ones in the meantime, which gives us a target market for our audience. So what we're looking at for employers is there's a shortage of hires in agriculture, which is why the H-2A program exists. There's such a shortage that we import workers internationally to do our work every year. And 80% of the hires aside from the H-2A program are direct through the employer themselves or through labor agencies, just pinning down that we're not competing with Monster and LinkedIn. We're providing a system to a sector that needs it. So what's our process look like? I know this slide's a little busy, so I'll try and break it down easily for you guys. First, employers purchase a job post for us at $50 a job post. If they're a first-time poster, they build their ideal candidate profile, they post it. If they're not a first-time poster, the candidate profile autofills and they post that. They can edit it if they need to for a different job type. At this point, a shareable link is generated. That shareable link is one of the, so that shareable link is one of the highlights of our project. You can post it anywhere, emails, social media, text, anywhere you can post text, you can post this link. Once an applicant selects the link, it directs them into our application. So the first time they use it, they have to download the app, input their personal info, fill out the application, submit, the app closes, leaves them where they started. Simple and easy. If they're not a first-time applicant using our app, the app pops open, fills out everything that they've provided previously for them. Anything they haven't provided for that particular application, they fill in at that point. That data is also saved. They submit, app's off their screen, leaves them where they started. At this point, the application data is sorted through our database by percent match. Employers pop in, hit contact top seekers, however many they need. Applicants are automatically contacted through the app. Boom, you've got hires. So how's the product streamline the application service? I'm just going to click through this, but long story short, we'll start with high weight questions, move to low weight questions. High weight, your contact information, you need it. Have you done this job before? Yes, I've done this job before. What tasks do you need somebody to be familiar with? These are the tasks I'm familiar with and how much I'm familiar with them. It's easy to fill out as you go through it. So the applications are easy to generate and easy to fill out for both sides of the experience. If anything's been answered before on either side, our app autofills it. So it's even faster the second, third time around. So how do we get market penetration? Of those 70,000 farms in Washington and Oregon, we can expect employers to be fairly resistant to this. So what we're going to do first year, pay farmers a nominal fee to proof our product by allowing us to find them in-country labor. And what we're looking for is to hit 10% of the market with this. If we provide our service for free, we have our customer service agency post the ads for them, which should be super easy using our product. We're also providing an alternative to the temporary agricultural program, which I should mention drives up wages for in-country hires. So they have an incentive to get around that. That wage increase is the worst in Washington and Oregon. To get employees on board, it's fairly simple. We utilize Facebook ads. We promote our application and our applications at the same time by posting the links into the Facebook ads. They can be shared easily by people in Facebook throughout networks. A useful statistic for this is that 80% of ag workers are Hispanic. 71% of US Hispanics use Facebook every single day. And besides that, it's the #1 platform in the US considering all demographics together. 79% of that demographic access the internet through their mobile device. So what we're going to do is use Facebook ads to generate shareable apply anywhere links to target the agricultural worker population and enable them to do all of this through their phone quick and easy so that when they need a job, they can find it. Thanks. This is our cash flow analysis. Our expenditures should decrease over time as we become established. We'll eventually need less ads because people are sharing our links more frequently through their own networks. Assuming, well, I've got my assumptions listed out here. I'm not going to go through them with you guys. But within 3 years, we should be turning a profit. And by year 5, we've well exceeded our initial costs. So our asks, we're looking initially for an angel investor for the 350 grand that we need to build a design team, generate our app and database. And then following that, we'll need $2 million, which will probably go to a venture capitalist for to try and start up in the field, which is mostly marketing costs. If things go as planned, we break even in year 3, which gives us one of 2 exit strategies. 1, we grow into phase 2, where we expand to the hospitality industry. Our costs remain more or less the same, but we have way, way more hires that we can provide. And then we start building in optional features like BuzzFeed style behavior and skill quizzes. Our applicants can do them in their free time. It improves applicant profiles. It improves screening beyond anything that's out there right now. Exit 2, we get bought out by the giants that already exist once they see us. And then we return 5 to 10 times our investor money based on our equity. Before I go into questions, I do have one more slide because I'm a pessimist that I generated for myself. But Mohan earlier inspired me to show this to you guys. If everything doesn't go according to plan and our expenditures are proportional to growth with no cap, we're not turning a profit on top of our initial investment until year 6. So we break even in year 5. Going into year 6, we run the program for 1 more year and we're making money. So now I can take questions if anybody has them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tel, and thank you to the Apply Anywhere team. Judges, who would like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Tel, I'll jump in first on this one. It wasn't clear between the executive summary and the pitch whether you're planning on just running a completely competitive employment service or whether you're thinking about linking up multiple employment services with a standard set of questions.
So the reason for that is because I hadn't made that decision early on. And as we went through the process, we kind of whittled this down into a more viable minimal product launch. This is effectively a direct competitor. We're starting in agriculture, so we don't start off as a direct competitor. But as we grow, we are going to become something that's directly in competition with those hiring giants. And the idea is to grow large enough, fast enough that they can't squish us. So we start outside of what they're looking at. And then if our program takes off entirely, we can make them obsolete.
Okay, so then just a quick follow-up, now that my mind's in the right space as to where this is headed for you. Can you help me understand, again, what competitive advantage you have that's not currently being served in the marketplace?
Right now, the systems that exist, from what I can tell, actually make the hiring process harder, so they have something to sell. We're making the hiring process easier. So it's easier for employers to hire. It's easier for applicants to use our system. Let's take what LinkedIn currently provides as an example. You go on, you're looking for a job. Some of those jobs, a tiny fraction of them, are easy apply. The first thing I click on when I'm looking for a job is the easy apply, because I pray that the right job for me is going to be one of these easy apply forms. All of our forms are easy apply. And as we grow, we're starting with low skill workers because we need less information to vet them to make sure that they're a good match for an employer. As we grow, we start adding those behavior and cultural quizzes. People take BuzzFeed quizzes for fun. So we can start showing that data to employers. Applicant profiles grow more complex, but the applicant doesn't have to plug anything in more than once. So once we've got that data, we're providing the most complete applicant profile out there with a snap of our fingers, effectively. But interfacing with other platforms has been, from my research, very untenable. There's too many. The APIs that exist currently can barely handle it. So we just want to keep it in-house so we can keep everything streamlined so it works.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hey, this is Sherry. I have a couple of just practical questions. One, the community you're targeting, especially on the worker side, is suspicious of different types of technology for a variety of reasons. What is to stop someone who does not have legal status in the country using the app, thinking, okay, and then we run into problems with Homeland Security and other people wanting access to the app. And, while there are a lot of people who have smartphones, there actually is a limit. I mean, because I used to work with the population, like you would think people would have more facility with the smartphone than they do. And so I'm just unsure about the workability aspect for the population who would be using the service.
Well, for one thing, we're not strictly limited to that population alone, but you bring up a good point. In the end, there's not much we can do to get around the legal status. Some of the personal contact information that we're going to end up having to collect, just because it's why every ATS company does it right now. It's a question that's on every application for a reason, because we will have government oversight looking at our system. And they're going to want us to do this, and we can't say no to them. So we do have to ask those questions. But if somebody doesn't have legal status, they either have to tell us or they lie, which in either case, we're not liable for. I don't think we should be liable for it any more than the current application systems are. But yeah, that's something that we can't really address with our system. The population it is what it is. We're gonna and that's why we're starting on phones, because we want to make it as accessible as possible. Initially, I was going to make it a browser plugin so people could use it through any browser that they're using on any web page. But most of these people are using their phones for all their internet services. So we're going to start on the phones and then move to browsers instead.
This is Linda. You mentioned down the road moving into the hospitality industry. And by that, do you mean restaurant servers and cooks and bartenders, or hotel maids and that kind of thing, or both? And what kind of research did you do about the competition in that space already?
So I will be perfectly honest with you. I haven't done a whole lot of research moving into larger spaces at this stage of the game. We've been working on this for about 3 weeks. I came up with this idea just for this event. So I'd have to look into that. Ideally, we would do both, but we would probably want to start with the second group that you mentioned, the hotels, those kind of services, but because those jobs are of a similar skill level to those as done in restaurants, either would be viable. So we could probably do both at the same time, assuming we could data scrape enough that we could provide employers with an easy application generation process for both.
If you decide to move forward with this, you might check out another Portland-based company called Poach Jobs that does this for servers, cooks, bartenders, that kind of thing.
All right, thanks.
So keying off of something Sherry said about the immigration status, I guess you don't really need to do that at the application level, right? Since that's an I-9 thing, but I don't know if you meant you have deeper questions you ask on the application. I couldn't quite follow that. But so it seems to me, you mentioned Indeed and some of the others, where the industry is going in staffing is really on demand. And it's really kind of what you seem to allude to, where your database is a matching. So it's not really the application, although you said apply anywhere. It seems like your technology really is in the matching of the candidates, right? So you want a person to apply, have their data, and when they apply for a particular position, you go into your database and match it right away. Am I getting that right?
No, not from launch anyway. So that's a more complicated feature programmatically. So that wouldn't be a minimum viable launch or that wouldn't be an MVP feature. It's something we want to provide in the future, but it's actually something that we took off the table from launch. What we're looking at is the employer posts they throw their post out there. The applicant has to apply for that. And then the matching system takes all of the applications for that particular post and it match percents them there.
Okay.
What you're describing is something that we would probably consider making a freemium feature in the future with, oh, you'd like a job, these jobs are out there, we can offer to show you the jobs that you want most. But I haven't really delved too deeply into that one because it wasn't viable to start off with.
Okay, it sounds to me that's what you're saying. So that's fine. Let's leave that aside. So now your application process that you're saying is more streamlined. Your example is, I don't know that I have that experience. So like today, Indeed, Monster, and all those guys, they take an application, some long, some small, they deliver it to the ATS, and that's the end of it. There's no secondary applying after that. So I'm not sure I completely connected with when you said they apply on the job boards, they get to the ATS, they apply again. I don't know that I've seen that. Maybe I'm missing the type of workers you're referring to, but in general job boards, you apply and then the data is in the ATS or goes to the employer in whatever arrangement that they have with Indeed or the others. Did I miss something there?
What you're describing is the easy apply system through those, what they offer right now. But if you're not using the easy apply system, you go onto the job board and the button that it provides you with is, I want to apply. It redirects you to the third-party ATS system where you input your information. Now, usually it's redirecting you to a different ATS system, every different employer. So every time you go onto the job board, it redirects you to third party. You fill out your information, you submit it. Now the employer's got it. And that's the applicant has to do it every time. And that's what becomes tedious because it's the same information every ATS is asking for, but you have to keep typing it in. And the ATS systems, if you try and use the ATS system to scrape your resume, it'll take your education and put it in work experience. And then you don't just have to fill out your contact info, you have to go in and fix everything that it incorrectly scraped. So which is why we keep everything in-house to prevent that kind of thing from happening if we interface with another system.
Okay, so really your system is they create a profile with the set questions that you're saying, or you can generally map to commonly asked questions. And then when they see a new position, they can just click apply and you provide that information into the form that's being presented.
Yeah. So the applicant, like if a particular employer asks questions 1 through 6, the applicant would have to fill out questions 1 through 6 for that application. If in the next form, the question asks, the employer asks questions 2, 5, 7, and 8, then the applicant just has to fill out 7 and 8. 2 and 5 are filled for them along with their personal contact information. And it kind of snowballs throughout that, because the more applications you submit, the less form fill you have to do. So you actually start applying even faster the more applications you've been going through.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And that brings us to time. Thank you so much, Tel. Thank you so much, Apply Anywhere. Great job. It's really inspiring to see all these ideas and created in such a limited amount of time too. It's hats off to all these teams. Our next team up is Moksha. Moksha, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Johanna. I'm here to tell you about Moksha, which is early mental illness detection. Major depressive disorder is the most commonly diagnosed mental illness in the United States. On an average year, approximately 7.3 million Americans are diagnosed. That's approximately 7% of us. The good news is that for those who seek treatment, it's usually effective within 4 to 6 weeks. The bad news is that it's estimated that 50% of those who are suffering from major depressive disorder are never diagnosed and never treated. And there's an indication that things are only getting worse because these are not average times. Recently, the US Census Bureau did a survey in which 42% of those who responded said that they were experiencing symptoms of depression. In addition to what is obviously a huge human cost to this problem, there's also an economic cost. In 2019, that cost was $225 billion. Compare that to $173 billion in 2005. While there's direct costs associated with clinical depression, there's also indirect costs, and 50% of those are workplace-associated costs, particularly in the form of absenteeism and presentism, which is when you show up but you're not engaged. So what does that really mean? Let's look a little closer. For a company like Nike, who did over $40 billion in sales last year and has a little bit over 76,000 employees worldwide, that would mean that in an average year, almost 7,000 of those employees are affected by clinical depression. According to a calculator provided by the American Psychiatric Association, that means that it costs Nike just over $111 million a year. So what's the solution? What can we do? How can we improve individuals' ability to recognize that they may be clinically depressed? We believe that a better screening tool will help. Moksha is a passive app that uses the same screening criteria as your doctor and continuously monitors behavior and looks for patterns or changes that may indicate risk for clinical depression. At-risk users are sent a discreet message urging them to seek professional support. Early detection leads to early diagnosis, which leads to early treatment, better outcomes, and reduced costs. So we plan to market Moksha first to large companies with over 1,000 employees as part of their corporate wellness plan. To figure out what the market size is there, what we did is we looked at the average cost of a web platform-based wellness plan, which is $5 per month per employee, and then using the percentage of companies that already offer their employees a wellness plan and the number of US employees who are employed by these companies, we estimate that large companies over 1,000 employees, that market share is worth $2.8 billion. And there's reason to believe that COVID has increased interest in workplace mental health. Forbes recently reported that 53% of employers have started to provide specific emotional and mental health programs, including access to wellness apps over the past year. In phase one, our business model is pretty simple. A basic subscription model, $7 per month per user. In phase two, we'd really like to offer employers aggregate data and analytics, which provides insights into overall employee well-being and trends, and then at that point introduce a tiered subscription model, providing fancier insights and dashboards at a premium level. So who's our competition? What makes Moksha different is that it's based on real diagnostic criteria. And it's able to continuously and objectively measure key indicators of behavior rather than relying on the user to report it while remaining inexpensive. Our direct competition is anyone else who screens for depression. That would be your doctor's office, other apps, self-screening tools like quizzes you might find on Google, other wellness programs, and a full mental exam. Kind of like the type that you might get if you were being put on a psychiatric hold or maybe at risk of being hospitalized. Doctors' offices only provide a snapshot. It's just a moment in time of how you're feeling right then. Apps are not scientific. Self-screening tools aren't objective. Other wellness programs, they're really informational and resource-based. And full mental exam is very, very expensive. Team Moksha brings a diverse set of skills and professional experience to the table. Gabriella is an accounting and finance professional with a background in psychology. Benjamin is a physician and a proven entrepreneur. Thomas is a medical student with a strong business acumen, and I'm a technical project manager with startup experience and a background in social services. Our ask today is for $660,000. With that money, over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll develop our MVP. To do that, we need to fund a development team, both in the US and offshore, a data scientist and an analytics team to develop and validate our algorithm. We've also included funds in order to cover testing and validation costs, and also to cover operational costs, a CEO and a COO. We're also seeking to identify a corporate partner so we can execute a beta with a prospective client. Thank you very much for your time and consideration today.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Moksha. Judges.
Johanna, I love it. It's super important to be on top of your overall health and wellness. And so many apps today share information with things like Apple Health and can come back to you and tell you things you don't know about yourself. And I think that that's fabulous. I caught in there that you said you wanted to be able to share employee information with the employer. That's going to make adoption a little bit of an uphill climb because I don't think too many employees want their employers to know about their health situation. So I would caution you on that. I would also say that $7 a month might be a challenge to get people to adopt into their health benefit plan. So, there's some structure in and around cost there. Last question, did you consider in your model going instead of to the employers, to the health insurance companies to see if your solution would tie with their apps that are already in place for their large benefit plan apps?
All right, thank you for your comments and your questions. So the first point, we had sort of discussed, or we definitely discussed the issue of privacy. And that was some of the feedback that we all got when we sort of talked in our own communities about our ideas, was the concern about privacy. So when I spoke about providing information to employers, it was not individual user data, but an aggregate. So the hope there would be that eventually, if this was adopted into a corporate wellness plan, that a workplace could see overall trends and insights. So that way they could monitor in some very high level way what's happening with people that work for them. And also be able to see how different decisions or cultural events or interventions that they might be happening on an organizational level is affecting the people who work for them on a very high level. not individual user data. As far as the $7 price point, we adopted that price point based on our research. So what we found is that corporate wellness plans, obviously there's a range of offerings. However, in terms of looking at application-based web platforms, which is usually in the form of giving employees access to different internet resources that are usually informational, usually those cost between $350 at the lowest level and $750 at the highest. So that's how we got to the $7 price point. And then as far as insurance companies, we decided to go with a corporate wellness plan just because the cost benefit there is so huge. So in our example of Nike, they're losing over $111 million a year to this. However, for $7 per user for each of their employees, that's just over $500,000.
Yeah, I had a question just in general about the market. So I, consult with a lot of companies, and right now the biggest player moving into the business market is Calm. And of course, there's Talkspace, which has really pushed into this market. Calm is expanding tremendously in every aspect around business. I mean, there are a lot of big players who are just way farther down the road. I mean, how would this fit into that kind of space?
So our belief is that there is a gap here. And part of that is that no one is actually, what we're proposing is that we're actually using an algorithm in order to look at how people interact with their phones in order to look for patterns of behavior, which will then use key indicators matched against diagnostic criteria to indicate that somebody may be experiencing symptoms of clinical depression, which is different than what other people are offering. So for instance, your phone knows, most of us, the first thing that we do in the morning is we pick up our phone. The last thing we do at night is put down our phone. If we wake up in the middle of the night, usually we play with our phone. So if somebody is all of a sudden experiencing a disruption in behavior, that's indicative of a problem. And I just want to turn this over to Benjamin, who is one of my team members, to address this for a moment.
So just for everybody's reference, companies like Calm will offer a subscription so that you can access like meditation and calming exercises. The problem with people with major depressive disorder is that many of them don't even know that they're depressed and are unlikely to seek help by themselves. So if you give them something, then say, here, do this, most of them won't actually engage and the results won't actually be good. And the big companies after will try these things and then wonder down the road whether or not it's having a direct benefit. What we're proposing is using the criteria that doctors and psychiatrists already use to look at major depressive disorders and mood disorders, to track those things and see what interventions in their institutions are really helping to work. So this is not really a competitive play, but giving them the analytics that they need to basically make better decisions in their wellness program in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, there are several apps out there now that can track how much you're using your phone, that can tell you about your level of engagement. That, there's a combination of apps out there that are doing that. And then Talkspace, which, has an assessment and has an actual interface with people asking you questions. I understand what you're saying. People might not know. But then the other question back to Jordan's is, for health insurance purposes, for life insurance purposes, et cetera, if that type of information was accessible, that you were inadvertently diagnosed with major depression in some kind of app space, that could really have consequences for your ability to, say, get life insurance potentially. So how does that, have you thought about that? I hate to ask such detail.
Yeah, but only on an individual level, because the data isn't released to anybody and pinpoints an employee. It's an aggregate. It tells you what the general mood and mental health of is across hundreds, if not thousands of employees. So if one person is having a problem, it doesn't tell you who that person is. But if everybody just doesn't like the work an extra 5 hours on Friday afternoon, and it's really starting to weigh on the company, it's probably a bad policy for the company to do things like that.
Okay, so just jumping in to clear this up one more time. On the individual's phone, if I had your app on my phone, would it tell me, hey, Jordan, you seem to be experiencing symptoms of depression? Or would it only be aggregating behind the scenes on my phone and sending aggregate data to an employer saying, hey, your collective employee group is experiencing these symptoms?
Yeah. So in order to tell somebody that they have depression, it would have to be a diagnostic level medical device. This is not it. It will not tell you if you're having depression or depressive symptoms. It will be monitoring, it will be looking for things that point to your general mental wellness that in aggregate can tell a group of people how they're doing. Now, down the line, it could get good enough to do exactly that. But at this point, as it's a company wellness app, because we don't have the kind of data to perfect it to go in that direction. So it would not to tell anybody anybody would be depressed or make that claim, but it could tell your employer, hey, these new deadlines and this new format means everybody is getting 3 hours less sleep every week. And that's probably a bad thing. Or everybody is so busy that they're not engaged in looking at articles and their interest level is starting to fall. And that's probably not a good thing.
This is Linda. Would the employees have to opt in to the app?
Yes, basically. The employer would have to engage and establish that relationship with the employees.
So it's possible that any company who purchased this service would have varying degrees of employees who opt in then.
Quite possible. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, the company really has the freedom to deploy the app in any way they feel. If they feel like they would only like HR to have it, or purchasing to have it, or the administration to have this app on that group of people, they have the freedom to do that. They don't have to roll it out company-wide from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Second quick question is, what is the go-to-market strategy?
Go-to-market strategy is basically to launch the app as a beta, to collect the data that is pertinent to a company's needs. And then when it's perfected to the point where they find the value to basically charge for the users, to start with a freemium model and then to move into a later charge subscription model.
Thank you.
We're about at time, but Rick, did you have a quick question, or should we keep moving?
Well, it's not a quick question, unfortunately. But I can ask it really briefly and get a partial answer. So your tagline, it says something like easy mental illness detection, right? They seem to be not congruent for each other, right? So mental illness detection is very tough, right? Like you said, right? You gotta have a diagnosis, and a full medical write-up to get a really good diagnosis. So I missed the part where you connected it and made it easy mental illness detection. I'm not quite following that.
So I think that where that comes from is that it is actually very difficult to get screened for mental illness. So you have to go into a doctor's office. So this is essentially saying that it uses your general behavior against diagnostic criteria, and it gives you a non-diagnostic, however, a screening that may indicate risk.
Based on my app usage or device usage?
Based on your, if the app is running passively in the background, it detects your user data against diagnostic criteria, which then screens, which then may indicate that you may be at higher risk for a diagnostic.
Here's a quick example, and I don't know if words in your mouth, something like you're on Facebook 8 hours a day, right? Is that indicating something to you that your algorithm would then say, this person is spending too much time on the device? Is that sort of what you mean?
So, Benjamin, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at how people use their phones these days, the phone is the first thing you pick up in the morning, and the last thing you put aside at the end of the night. What that means is your phone knows exactly how many hours you spend in bed and how many hours you probably sleep. Changes in sleep patterns basically are one of the diagnostic criteria for major depressive disorder. Nobody's tracking it in that way because they don't think in that way. But absolutely, if your interests start to change, you're usually spending 8 hours on Facebook, and then you change and you spend an hour or half an hour on Facebook all of a sudden, that could be an indication that your mood is changing.
So, I mean, I don't want to get down into the weeds with you or anything, but so I don't know, how would you know that? For example, if I'm using Facebook or not, you may know how many hours I'm sleeping because I'm running your app. But how would you know the other apps I'm using if I'm using them too much, and what it actually means? I don't know what it means to use Facebook all day or some other app that you may be using as a criteria. I'm not quite following how you would get that information, and then how you determine it actually means something.
So it probably doesn't. This is all machine learning, so it's theoretical what the machine would actually pick up to give the indication. But it probably doesn't need to know that you're on Facebook, only that your activity level has changed. When you're on Facebook, you do a lot of swiping. So it knows, like, maybe when you're normally happy and sleeping well, that you do a lot of swiping. But then all of a sudden, if you don't sleep well and you don't do the swiping motion anymore, then the app can tell that something has really changed in your mood.
Okay.
And
that's what I'm saying, getting deep into the weeds.
Yep.
I don't know that you would know how much I'm swiping in Facebook with your app. Because apps are sandboxes, you don't know what's going on in another app, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how your algorithm would apply what I'm doing in other apps.
Well, that's a little trade secret because there are actually very, very easy ways to track exactly how much of your battery life is being devoted to each one of these apps that you're using.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Team Moksha. Really appreciate this. And
thank you.
Once again, lots to think about. We are on to our last team. How did that happen already? Authentic Connections, the floor is yours.
So hello, my name is Kevin, and this is my wife, Annalise, who's here with me. Our team is Andrea, Carrie, and Robert, and we're going to talk today about authentic connections. So when we first saw the theme of this event, which is disrupting a post-COVID-19 world, my wife and I asked the question of, what does COVID mean? And that might sound kind of like a dumb question, given that we've all been living through this. Obviously, many people have died. The economy is forever changed. We all work from home now, and toilet paper costs as much as a smartphone. And while all these things are true, I feel like they're symptoms of the change and not the change itself. And as someone who loves history, studies history, I looked at other massive moments of change in our past. World War II, for example. Before the war, America was a dedicated isolationist nation. We weren't going to get involved in problems of Europe or the rest of the world. The event happened, society changed, and America became the leader of a global community. Even sooner in our own history, if you look back at 9/11, America was a nation of confidence. We were the world's lone superpower. The event happened, society changed, the 24-hour news cycle emerged, fear of potential threats replaced our confidence. Everything is now a threat to democracy, or it's a war on Christmas, or it's something. That's our whole society has changed. And, really in asking the question, what does COVID mean? And if you ask people right now, what are of what they want the most coming out of COVID, the answers you're going to get, it's not a revamped medical system to take better care of people. It's not the end of offices for business. And it's not changes to our clearly broken unemployment system. They dream about going to restaurants and bars. And it's not because these other things don't matter. It's because connection and community are vital to our very existence. Our need to be with and connected to other people is vital to our survival in the same way the air we breathe and the food we eat. So make no mistake, just keep on the slide. We believe that the lesson to be learned from COVID is that all the likes, the digital friends, the content streams, they're not a replacement for real, authentic human connection. We live in the most digitally connected age in human history, but perhaps the least human connected one. Our idea is to meet the need for authentic connections. Our idea is to create exactly what our keynote speaker, Mohan, talked about earlier, and that's the golden age of humanity meets technology. Our idea is authentic connections, which, fair warning, is actually just a holding name. We actually have not come up with a real name, but getting into it, let's talk about the problem. Loneliness is widespread, period. 3 in 5 Americans reported feeling lonely in 2020. That's about the same amount of people in the country that own a house, and it's 3 times Netflix's current US subscriber base. So that is an enormous part of our population. COVID had highlighted these feelings of disconnection. They are more prevalent, they are more in all of our faces than they ever have before. And what is the status quo? What already exists? There are platforms that they foster a one-to-many, one-way interaction. Think of Instagram, think of YouTube. What they really offer is we are all looking at one person. We are all seeing things one way. It's about encouraging new connections, new interactions, a way of continuing to pile up likes. It's transactional, which is really part of the problem. And it's increasing our feelings of loneliness. Next slide. So based on that, we kind of went back to the drawing board and we said, what is a vision if we want to really foster real human connection? How do we create it? And really, how is it different than that approach we just discussed? And we see a world where quality of a relationship is valued over quantity. It's not about how many friends you have. It's about the connection you have with the friends you do. Where technology is used to deepen a relationship in an authentic way. Where we all feel seen and not having to be something we're not having to win the FOMO war. And it's a world where we don't have to matter. Do I matter? Do I have to be someone else? Can I just be myself? So here's the concept. We want to move away from this one-to-many approach, and we want to create something that we see as reverse social media. It would be a phone application. It's an interaction that creates an authentic, deep relationship, and it's really focused around the people you already know and care about. We want to build trust and establish a deeper relationship. And the core of this is a guided experience that makes it easy, and ideally gamification that makes it fun. So the best way for me to kind of have you visualize this is if the current social media platforms, they're a lot like television. You watch a news anchor. It's many, many, many millions of people looking at one per person. It's a one-way interaction. All you're going to get is what this person has. It's the same thing as our celebrity culture we have now. What we're talking about is a concept and an application that really is more akin to video games. So if you've ever played Mario Party or some interaction game where you and your friends would go huddle around a TV and everyone gets a controller, yes, there's that experience, there's that central concept, but really what it's about is everyone else interacting with each other. It's a guided experience in which you get to work with the people around you and you're deepening those relationships. Go to the next one. And what is our value proposition? Our value is that we want our users to feel better and more fulfilled with the relationships they already have. Again, it's quality over quantity. And it's this idea that more is not better. Better is better. So, if every time you get a like, if every time you post some new picture, somebody likes it, it's a dopamine hit. It's that short burst of excitement. Oh, I posted this picture and I got 300 likes. I feel great. And it's the same thing as going to buy a new shirt or going to buy something that you want. I mean, it's great in that moment, but it does leave you feel a sense of lacking. It's not an actual connection. And that's where our idea goes back to, building moments of vulnerability, recreating those moments in any friendship where you actually build a deeper connection. What I like to call kind of that time where you sit and you grab a drink with someone and you're willing to actually share something yourself. that is so drastically missing from every element of social media right now. And we want to recreate that.
Yeah, I have 1 more minute.
So what we're talking about is a free offering. Think of like a CRM where you're managing your customers, but in this case, it's a text message, it's an interaction. You're being able to reach out to friends, both parties download the app, you select the type of relationship, it fosters communication. Go to the next one. And then ultimately there's a higher level, which is video and photo, gamification, different experiences, a murder mystery game with your friends and family remotely, learning to taste wine with your friends, or even taking a vulnerability and connections class with your significant other in a guided experience. And then we want to do market research, develop an MVP, find an expert guide, and then really eventually launch from there. And ultimately what we are asking for, go ahead, let's skip the team, is we want to be able to find somebody to help us build the knowledge base that we need to then actually find financing. So we're very transparent in this. We've pivoted this idea a couple times. You know, we're a little bit further away than some of these teams. And, you know, we feel if we can continue to build the base that we have, we can then go and make that pitch with some pretty solid financials and an offering. So, and I apologize for skipping over our team. We have some very qualified people, but I wanted to finish on time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin, and to the whole Authentic Connections team. So much appreciated. Judges.
Did the concept make sense?
Well, I'll repeat it back to you. I think it's pivoted from the executive summary of more of a dating app in a new way to a deeper connection with friend app. Did I get that based on your common connections?
Yeah. So unlike a lot of the teams, this was kind of a dating app idea that we came into this for fun. And when we started doing some market research, we realized that space is extremely crowded. And what we're really looking for is how do you use technology to foster a more authentic connection to kind of establish vulnerability and trust. And so that's where we came up with this idea of like the MVP really being almost like this individual relationship management software, where if I want to keep in touch with 10 of my best friends, I can go through this kind of stage of questions that says, okay, select this type of relationship. So call it friend, select the frequency of questions that you want to be sent. So let's say once a week, once a month, every 6 weeks, what have you. And then you select your spiciness level. So like, how deep do you want to go with this friend? And then there's this, kind of relationship. The platform is furthering the relationship without you having to remember, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a couple months. And then that would be kind of the freemium version. And then the paid option is really integrating guides and influencers and experts to be able to create experiences that these relationships could take part in. So for example, if you wanted to, so let's say Kevin and I were, I don't know, he was on a business trip and we wanted to watch a movie or a football game together. We could go enter a guided experience to do that together, but apart.
Great. So what's the ask? Have you guys gotten far enough to know financially what you're looking for?
No. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. We don't know. I feel like at this point with the idea, and I know it's a weird thing to say to a panel of investors, but at this point we feel like there needs to be a lot more market research into making sure that we really understand what is the pain point here. We're looking at our own experience. And 3 weeks ago, we thought we were going to create a dating app, and now it's morphed into something totally different. So yeah, we honestly don't know what that looks like as far as the financial ask.
I guess we're saying we would love to come back to you, but if there's some people that you would recommend that we could speak to further develop this and really build something, because we don't have a financial model at this point, considering how much we pivoted, and then have the opportunity at that point, because we don't want to come pitch something that we're just making up to be able to complete this project. We're just going to lay it on the table as we know it.
So I want to ask about just our previous presentation about, concerns about too much time on apps, excuse me, and not connecting, right? Was there any concern about that as a contraindicated thing that would happen as a result of this?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way we've been thinking about it, and as we've been developing this idea, we're not trying to recreate a face-to-face interaction. We don't feel like that can be recreated with technology. We're almost trying to just create a new paradigm of interaction, where right now, when you look at social media, it is this one-to-many, it ends up being very transactional connection point. I don't want to say it's not connection, because it is. And then face to face, you're getting all of this other type of information that's furthering the connection. And we're looking at how do we use technology to get to somewhere else. You know, we're not trying to make new connections. We're trying to take people who are physically apart, and how do we deepen that connection while knowing that we're never going to recreate face to face. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. It wouldn't be the type of app that's trying to get people off their phones.
I would say it this way. If we do our job right, it's really not even about the app. You know, it's not about interacting with the app. It's a vector to interact with the people who matter in your life in a way that's more than a phone call or having a Zoom happy hour. But if you can't go and meet in person the same way you have. So it's that if you go back to when you were a kid and you have your friends over and you have a pizza party and you play video games, you can't maybe be in the same room with them, but some of those same interaction pieces you can recreate. You know, some of the ideas that we talked about is like, imagine a wine tasting, you know, at one of the higher levels where you guys all buy the winemaker is on the Zoom, he's guiding the experience, and you and your friends are chatting, potentially all across the country, and sharing that guided experience. It's something that's not the same as being in a winery in Napa or, you know, the Oregon wine country and enjoying that together, but it's way different than just hopping on a call or doing a Zoom meeting and having nothing to talk about.
This is a silly example, but if anybody watches The Bachelor or Bachelorette, this idea kind of came up when I had a friend, his name's Zach, and he wanted to watch The Bachelor with us, and we weren't comfortable being face to face because of COVID. And I was like, how cool. There's a bunch of Bachelor experts. There's this one named Bachelor Fan Take. And I was like, how cool if Bachelor Fan Take could create a guided experience for us and Zach to both do while we're watching it together. So that's kind of where we're going, the concept at least.
So I like your acronym, you know, individual relationship management. So I like how you're rethinking it. You know, I see you're not quite there yet, but I like how you're rethinking it and not willing to let yourself get pigeon-toed into a dating app or anything else. It's kind of, you're defining what this thing is for yourself, and you're open to it. So I think that's really a positive. I think there's a lot you've got to learn, right? You know, the industry is huge, but I think you're right. The phone usage is so high, and it is one way, one to many, that if you can find a way of bringing that a little more one-to-one or one to smaller groups, I think you might be on something. So I don't really have anything to add to that other than to tell you I like how you're thinking about it.
Thank you.
And just, I guess, just to speak a little tiny bit to the process here, why we ended up where we at is we kind of came in with this idea about dating. It's like we had some really cool concepts about adding multi-sensory approach and trying to like not be so much a swipe and type dating app like a lot of these Tinder and things that are out there are, and really engaging with the group, which was a great discussion. There's just so many dating apps. There's so much, you know, it's easy to get lost in kind of the approach. And it kind of feels like we stumbled onto something genuinely special in the conversations we had about that lack of human connection. And, you know, we're at this phase because we really do want to explore that and understand more about that and what that means. And, you know, it's kind of more than just, you know, checking the box to complete this program, what it is. It really is a genuine, you know, learning experience and something I think we're going to take out of this. So
yeah,
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah, our goal here and presenting to all of you today is really kind of taking the next step of does this feel to others like it meets a need?
One of the things you might want to do as far as where to go next, I really like the pivot as well. I echo Rick's comment. My nephew recently got accepted to college, and one of the things they sent to him was a roommate dating app, right? So it pivots off of the old dating module to put you with a roommate that you like. And so I don't know if the University of Oregon's using that or if Andrew has a connection there, but it definitely seems like those would be the types of relationships you might want to start to form as you think about your product.
Yeah, that's interesting because both Kevin and I feel strongly that other people are doing the connection making they're doing it well. Creating the actual connection, finding this person and putting them together. There are other people doing that really well. We want to come in and take that further. We're looking to further the connection that's already been made. Whether it's, when I went to college, we had a dating too, and it was like you popped the question, hey, do you want to be my roommate? And it felt exactly like dating.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I like to pivot as well. And I could see potentially that it could be helpful to remote workers. These days, companies have workers all over the country or even based in other countries. And this could be something to spur that feeling of connection that you would have if you were actually physically in an office.
Would you foresee it fostering conversations pertinent to the work or conversations with other team members of things outside of work?
Both.
The thing that I found very interesting about this as we really dove into it is that obviously there's that idea of vulnerable connection. And I've read a lot of articles, and one of the ones that made me laugh the most is that a lot of corporate companies right now are pushing their employees to play World of Warcraft because it's a way that the employees are having a guided experience to bond around outside of work when they can't get together. And it's really funny to think of like large corporate entities doing something like that, but it does really hit home to the idea of what we're trying to do is this other thing, this other shared experience, and potentially this platform of people rather than who want to draw attention directly for themselves and become an influencer, prefer to do something that's more service oriented, where I can offer a very cool experience that's going to make others fulfilled, and I can use this platform as the medium to do that. Kind of the Michelle Obama kind of becoming idea, where, she could host something and you guys can interact with it and take something away from it. And it's not about her becoming famous. It's about the people who had the experience becoming closer and more authentically connected.
Yeah, more service leadership from an influencer perspective.
Excellent.
How are we on time?
We are over. So thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, it's always a good sign to have a lot of discussion generated. And with every team, we could have spent twice as much time and still not had enough. So thank you to Authentic Connections. Thank you to all the teams. Another big round of applause, please. Thank you. Let's see. We're going to separate out into a couple different breakout rooms now. So judges, please join me in one breakout room. I think our tech team will just send us there. The other, and then we have 2 additional breakout rooms for the teams themselves to come together. We're a little behind schedule now, so let's come back together 10 minutes after it says on our form. So instead of 2:15, we'll all come back together at 2:25 for the announcement of our winners and just a final bit of wrap up. So thanks again. We'll see you all in about half an hour and to your respective breakout rooms now. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I have to tell you, this is not easy. I was just with our judges. We had a robust conversation around every idea. And our first conclusion is hats off to all of you. I think uniformly we looked at what you created in such a short period of time. And yes, I see Jordan giving a round of applause. Everyone is giving a round of applause to each of the teams. It's tremendous what you accomplished in really such a short period of time. If you think back that it was less than a month ago that we kicked off and started talking about what is entrepreneurship in the first place. And you've gone out and you've actually put these tools to use. You've created 6 really compelling, really interesting pitches. So we did not have an easy task, and that's a real testament to each of you. There's another group I also want to acknowledge that we haven't acknowledged yet, and that is the group of mentors who worked with each of our teams. We remember talking in our opening weekend about the importance of mentorship, not just for exercises like this, but for all startups. And I think you've heard many of our panelists reflect on that too. And it's such a testament, I think, to the way that that companies and that are built and that entrepreneurs function, that it's not a solo endeavor and it's not even just a matter of the team, but it's wrapping yourself around the terrific advice and resources and support that mentors provide. And it's with that same idea in mind that we're going to take this first bit of time before I announce the winners. I know you're all on the edge of your seat, but to also pay forward a little bit of that same mentorship spirit. So each of our judges has lots of thoughts on each of these ventures. You've already heard some of them in the Q&A, but we wanted to give just a little bit more time for each of the teams to get some feedback on your ideas before we jump into the winners. So with that in mind, I've asked each of the judges to give just a minute or two of additional comments on each of the teams. We're just going to go in order, so there's nothing implied by who they speak about first. Again, just to give you a little bit more feedback. So to kick things off, Sherry, would you like to offer just a few words to Changefinder about their idea?
Yeah, first of all, as someone who's spent a long time in philanthropy and nonprofits and getting money moved around and who is currently involved in trying to revolutionize how we think about nonprofits, I really appreciate the project a lot. I think, you know, there's definitely something here. There are a lot of other platforms that are designed to help people connect and move money. But there is a large movement. A lot of large funders are starting to move toward these 6 elements. There are 6 elements of trust-based philanthropy. And what I would strongly suggest you do is tie your product to helping execute on those 6 elements to make it easier. Because I also as a consultant, work with foundations, or for the Family Foundation, who ask this question: how do I practically do this? Like, I don't have that many people who work here. So being able to tie something like this to an actual need that small, large, medium funders have would be great. And also for the nonprofits who are stressed and who feel that the process is repetitive. So I think there's something there. And I appreciated the way you thought it through. And I appreciate the effort. And I just think having, you know, strong, just even more work on who's out in the market and how you distinguish yourself. And I think one of the ways you distinguish yourself is tying it to that model. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry. Smart Doc, Linda's going to offer some comments.
I think Linda's muted.
Sorry, how many thousand times a day during Zoom meetings do we have to say to someone, you're on mute? So apologies for that. I thought you guys did a great job on the presentation. I found this very intriguing. There's clearly an increasing need, especially with the aging population and all of us baby boomers moving forward. You've clearly given it a lot of thought. One thing I think that you could pay some additional attention to is how difficult or complicated it is to get accreditation for the training you're talking about, and how a strategic partner might be able to help you with that. I felt like this presentation, there's a real opportunity to find a strategic partner who could help you through this process and also help you go to market. That's one thing I would also urge you to give some more thought to. You made the statement that dentists are a tough nut to crack, and I absolutely believe that. So the question is, how in fact are you going to do that? How are you going to go to market and be able to penetrate that market? You know, in the old world, pre-COVID, you would probably go to a lot of conferences that had trade shows attached to them and be able to demonstrate the product and how it worked. That's off the table now, so give some real thought to how you do penetrate the market and move forward. But overall, a really great presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Linda. Virtual sales platform. Rick is going to offer some comments.
Okay. So I think you guys also did a good presentation, and I think you're in a great category. The thing is, though, I think you're mentioning salespeople, but I think there's lots of other people who don't consider themselves salespeople that could really benefit from your system, including salespeople. But I think almost everyone won't really admit they have the problem or their approach to sales is flawed. So I think you've got to bring out more concretely how you solve the problem, how you get them to having better sales, not necessarily fixing their problems. Again, most people aren't going to be receptive to that, but how you can make the sales process better. I think you can get a lot of good response from that. And I guess lastly, I would say what we talked about in terms of being a gap in sales is maybe obvious to salespeople, But to the other group that I think you should target, it's not always obvious, right? Because I can take from an engineering point of view, we tend to try to sell our product, our features, right? So something like this, helping a non-salesperson, I think is really valuable, and you should consider making your message broader so that not just salespeople understand it and appreciate it, but everyone kind of sees where you can take them, how you can make what they do better.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Apply anywhere. Jordan. You're muted as well.
Thank you all, first of all, for joining into the competition to make this an exciting afternoon. So on my comments, online applications, it's a tough and crowded space. I was really interested in your executive summary's mission to simplify the application process. It almost reminded me of how college application simplification has gone on, and you can create one application and get it out to multiple colleges. So that same thought process was interesting to me. Although I could acknowledge how sharing APIs across platforms would also get really challenging from the first place that you were going with the executive summary. So I could see where maybe the pivot came in. So I'll get a little specific on agriculture and migrant workers. We've got John Deere agricultural dealerships. So we sell automation and machinery to help solve some of the problems that you're also addressing. And I would say that you really need to consider sort of the bidding process that goes into play when you're dealing with seasonal farm workers. They can quickly shift from one farm to another, usually by one leader in the group who has the knowledge of which farm is offering how much an hour to move to their vineyard, to move to their farm. So if you could somehow figure out a way to enter into that space that farmers would begin to bid for the specific date, the weather pattern, everything plays in. So it's very specific to the date and the time. And then they can start putting out, we'll pay this much an hour, or this much a bushel, pound, whatever they're bidding on. That might be an avenue for you to pursue.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Moksha, we're back to Rick.
Okay. So I think you guys have a hot button item. I think everyone understands the need, especially today. I mean, mental health is being talked about a lot more than it's ever been talked about before. But for me, I would say the technology and how you do it is going to be a concern for investors as they do their due diligence. Maybe on the first presentation, it won't come out as much, but as investors do their due diligence, you've got to come out a little more with how your IP is going to work. I understand IP is super valuable, right? You don't want to give away more than you need to give away, but you're going to have to give an investment group something so they understand how you make these connections. Then the second concern I would have for you is privacy, right? A lot of the things you're talking about, how do you address some of the privacy, right? If you're doing what I think you're doing, you're going to have to address that. And if you address it in your presentation, you don't have to wait for the question. But those are the things that concern me. I think you guys are really knowledgeable in what you do and the need. So that came across really clearly. And I think your presentation was good, but I think you need to address those things as well to really make an investor or a group that you're presenting to feel comfortable about the technology in the business.
Awesome. Thank you again, Rick. And finally, authentic connections. We're going to go back to Jordan.
Right. This time I'm not muted, so authentic connection. I would say I felt an authentic connection with both of you. Your presentation was wonderful. It was honest, almost too honest. In front of an actual investor, that level of honesty is needed. In a business competition, put it on the judges to call you out if we need to. Because you have a great product, make some assumptions along the way. You only had 3 weeks, so it's understandable that this is a little bit more of a game than the actual pitch environment, to the extent that you need to spread your wings and throw in some assumptions. We all understand that. I look forward to hearing updates as you pull together this concept for closer experiences and connections. We all have friends and families that are close at heart but physically distant, and we can use better tools to make those connections. I also think that you have something for corporate bonding. A lot of us have businesses that are spread over large physical distances. And as you can figure out how to create those relationships, we all talk about culture, if your product can help companies spread that culture throughout a large employment group, that could also be a huge home run for you, figuring out a way to do distant virtual connection activities.
Excellent. Thank you, Jordan. And thank you again to all of our judges. Round of applause for each of you. And I wish, actually, I do. I have some applause sound effect I pulled up here. There we go. Excellent. Thank you for all of our judges.
Andrew, could I add one more thing?
Of course.
I watched your 60-second pitches 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I just want to tell you all how impressed I am with how far you've come in just a few short weeks. Great job, all of you.
Completely agree, and thank you for calling that out, Linda. It really is impressive, and this brings me to, in a sense, the awkward moment, because I'm supposed to announce winners, but you're all winners, and I genuinely mean that. I mean, this really has been a tremendous process, and to watch each and every team transform truly over a very short period of time has been terrific. That said, we now have both the men's and women's NCAA tournaments underway. This is an exciting time of March Madness. We were joking among the organizers that maybe we should have set up a bracket of some sort. Maybe that's an adjustment for next year, but I know that you are all anxious to hear, at the end of the day, how were we ranked, and how did the judges assess this? And again, I'll say this was very close and very difficult for the judges, but we do here have some winners. So let me get all my sound effects going, because why not? So our third place winner of the 2020 Ducks Disrupt event, little drum roll going, excellent. We actually have two. We had a tie for third place, really an inability to distinguish both teams, which have really terrific promise. So our dual third place winners are Virtual Sales Platform and Moksha. Congratulations to both teams, Virtual Sales Platform and Moksha. Yes, excellent. I should have pulled up the sound effects before. I mean, it's clearly making this Zoom far better. Our second place winner, a little hard to manage, though, I have to admit that. Our second place winner of the 2021 Ducks Disrupt event is Change Finder. Congratulations to Change Finder. And our first place winner, the team which will be going home with prizes still to be announced. They are coming, however, and most importantly, the coveted title of the 2021 Ducks Disrupt Innovation Silver Linings Pitchbook first place winner. I expect this to be at the very top of your LinkedIn page and your resume, is Smart Doc. Congratulations to Smart Doc. Excellent, excellent. Can we have one more round of applause for all the teams, please? I mean, this was such a terrific event and such a terrific job by all of you.
Yay.
Woo-hoo!
Nice, Smart Doc. Good job, Lindsay and Mitch.
Wonderful work. All right. My job now is to hand it over to Paul Allen, who's going to offer us some words of wisdom as we part ways. And as Paul will point out, I hope that we don't truly part ways. But before doing that, let me just offer my own sincere gratitude for the chance to spend last weekend with you and today, and to just be part of this journey. It really is inspiring to see what all of you are doing to take a bad situation of COVID and to look for those silver linings as you've done throughout this event. So thank you to each of you. Please be in touch, and over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Andrew. What an amazing day. I'm impressed by how far you've come as well. I know Linda mentioned that, but truly, having spent, the hours that you've spent, during this event and seeing you develop, and even over the last 3 weeks, wow, great job. And I've really, truly enjoyed, sending you along some messages. So don't be surprised if I get a little, sentimental and have to send you something via email or to call you up and see how you're doing. We've all been pretty greatly enriched by such wonderful speakers, panelists, and judges. Their involvement has elevated, of course, this event to new heights. And so they've given us powerful insights, asked such insightful questions, and we're truly blessed. A warm and sincere thank you to each of them. So thank you so much, speakers, panelists, and judges, for the time you spent with us and for the insight you've given. Also, thanks to all Ducks Disrupt mentors, as Andrew mentioned, for spending dedicated time with each team, and a big thank you to the Oregon Executive MBA staff for providing shape, organization, and of course, technical support. So thank you so much for that. Last but certainly not least, we couldn't have asked for a more dynamic, well-informed, and connected facilitator. It's no wonder Andrew Nelson holds so many prestigious titles at the University of Oregon. Everyone wants you on their team. So please join me in thanking Andrew for his powerful delivery of this content, genuine mentorship through this event. So please join me by unmuting your microphone and let's celebrate Andrew one last time as our facilitator.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
And the sound effects.
Real life ones. Well, before we close, again, a special thanks to each of you, Ducks Disrupt participants. Your participation means the world to us. I hope this event has given you a taste for what it's like to be an Oregon Executive MBA student, not only to be presented with great content, but provided an opportunity to practice what you learn. And most importantly, I hope you leave this event feeling empowered to take risks, experiment, and pitch new ideas. Now, more than ever, the world needs entrepreneurs to solve problems, create jobs, and help build the next iteration of the economy. So go forth and be wonderful and great. And again, thank you so much for participating with us today, and please stay in touch.